Goswami on The Debate.
Now it's time for the nation's sharpest opinion, and today all Canadians must be so ashamed that they are led by a liar. A certified liar called Justin Trudeau, who went on record before his country's Foreign Interference Committee last night and admitted that he has absolutely no hard evidence to prove that the Indian government ordered Khalistani terrorist Nijjar's killing. In other words, he simply made up the whole story and was just lying all along when he went to town, saying he has some hard evidence, that he has concrete proof that India killed Nijjar. His exact words are that he has some intelligence, but no hard evidentiary proof at all. At all. Canadians, you should be on the streets of your country asking this liar to leave. This is as bad as Tony Blair making up the weapons of mass destruction theory and then later saying that it was all fake and a work of fiction. Now, let me tell you what this intel is that Trudeau says he has. What this intel is actually in reality. It is another Khalistani terrorist, Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, who is also an American deep state asset, feeding Trudeau information and telling Trudeau that the killing of Nijjar was not gang war, but the Indian deep state and Indian agents at work. All of this happened because Trudeau believed Pannun. And Trudeau is now saying that I believed Pannun. Take into account now two statements that I will read out. The first, when Pannun said after Trudeau made the allegations against India a year back that, and I quote, SFJ, in other words, Sikhs for Justice, has been communicating with the Canadian PMO for 2 or 3 years. And after years of SFJ giving info to the Canadian PMO, Trudeau came out and did what he did. Second statement, when Trudeau said that his government's initial assessment was that Nijjar's killing was just gang-related, a gang war. You know, when two underworld bad people shoot each other. And Trudeau said he believed initially that no international access ever existed, but when South Asian, in other words, read Khalistani people and Khalistani MPs insisted, when they insisted it was linked to the Indian government, we looked at that angle. In other words, Trudeau thought this was two gangs fighting each other, but you see, these Khalistani terrorists came and told me, no, we must blame India, and I did exactly that. These two statements, made one after the other, simultaneously, within 24 hours, prove that Justin Trudeau and Khalistani terrorist Pannun were working very, very closely together, which is very disturbing. Canadians throw out this man Trudeau. He works with terrorists so closely. He believes them and then embarrasses all of you. And let me predict that even these Khalistan backers will dump Trudeau now that he has admitted that he had no hard evidence at all, that he had no evidence, that he was just lying. It's terrible. Trudeau is really a global joker. He's the kind of dangerous fool. And fool is actually an understatement in his case. He would accept proof from the Al-Qaeda. He would accept proof from the Hamas. He would even accept proof from the ISIS if he thought it would help him save his job. Canadians kick this embarrassment out. This joker has threatened the world's largest democracy with zero evidence. Privately, he admits he has no evidence. But publicly, he has misled Canadians by lying that he has. Trudeau is an immature, reactionary opportunist. And I am delighted. I am just delighted at the way we are showing him his place. To the Canadians, I would like to say, if you're watching this video, we have no quarrel with you. But the earlier you realize the damage Trudeau has done, the better. For your sake, not ours. Let's debate.
51-year-old Justin Trudeau stood in front of the Commission of Foreign Interference yesterday. Upon being subjected to some tough questions on his allegations against India, in what appears to be a major climb down and a massive embarrassment, the Canadian Prime Minister finally admitted that he had no proof.
Their asks of us was, well, how much do you know? Give us the evidence you have on this. And at that point, it was primarily intelligence, not hard evidentiary proof.
Listen in to how his tunes have changed from exactly a year ago.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Trudeau, in fact, went on to admit that the India angle was not taken into consideration until it was pointed out by his South Asian members of Parliament community members.
Hearing directly from a number of our South Asian members of Parliament and seeing and talking with members of the South Asian community around who were quite insistent that it was something that was likely connected to government of India. We actually asked the intelligence agencies, and it turned out they were doing this anyway, to look in more closely to the circumstances around this particular murder.
Interestingly, Guru Patwant Singh Pannun of Sikhs for Justice, a designated terrorist, came on Canadian TV yesterday. He said that he has been in touch with Canadian's Prime Minister's office for the last 2 to 3 years. Trudeau, meanwhile, has gone on a self-obsessive, atmospheric rant.
As we approached the end of August and September, the big thing that was happening was India was itself hosting the leader of the summit of the advanced economies of the world, the G20. So it was a big moment for India, welcoming the world, all the leaders of the world to Delhi for a very important summit. And we had the opportunity of making it a very uncomfortable summit for India if we went public with these allegations ahead of time.
On the sidelines of the summit, Trudeau recounted a conversation with Prime Minister Narendra Modi after the G20 summit in New Delhi.
It culminated with a conversation I had with Prime Minister Modi on after the end of the last session at the G20 in Delhi, where I sat down and shared that we knew that they were involved and expressed a real concern around it. He responded with the usual response from him, which is that we have people who are outspoken against the Indian government living in Canada that he would like to see arrested.
Meanwhile, India is claiming vindication.
PM Trudeau's own admission yesterday would indicate the value. As regards our stance on the allegations, we will naturally reject false imputations against our diplomats.
It's clear Justin Trudeau lied.
We have Daniel Boardman, Canadian journalist, who's back with us tonight, as is Anis Faruqi. He's, is a journalist based in Canada, pro-Canada. Professor Madhav Nalapat and our very own Abhijit Chawra. Thank you very much for the Indian perspective on this. Anis, you said day before yesterday that he has evidence, and when the time comes, he will put it out, right? This was the basis of your support to him. Now he says, I did not have the evidence. I do not have the evidence. I am asking the Indian side to give me the evidence. You will still support him after this? He's admitted that he lied.
I never support Justin Trudeau. Like my stance on
well, yesterday you said that he has the evidence. He does not have the evidence.
What I was supporting as a Canadian government, and if you listen to the Trudeau's statement which you just played, it says at that time, there was no hard, credible evidence, but there was intelligence. It does not change the fact that things did not happen. It does not change the fact that a Canadian was not murdered on a Canadian soil. So things still, and then it's not just the Trudeau.
How many Canadians are murdered on Canadian soil every day?
Well,
is it the first time a Canadian has been murdered on Canadian soil?
It's just like a street crime on Mumbai.
Yeah, so then for every street crime in Canada, will you blame India?
This is because of the intelligence.
No, what intelligence? He is saying the intelligence came from a terrorist called Pannun. He has said that. He said, I knew. 1 minute, Anis. Let's be very clear. People are furious here in India about this. He says that when I assessed it, when our government assessed it, we said it was gang related. It was between criminals and gangsters. And there is no international angle to it at all. This is how we were briefed by our people and our intelligence and our police and our RCMP and all that. Then the members of the South Asian community came to us and said, no, South Asian means, don't say South Asian, you can say Khalistan supporters. They came to us and said, no, India is responsible. Then we said India is responsible.
But you know, like...
I'm sorry. All Five Eyes intelligence and all is rubbish. Your Prime Minister has gone on, your Prime Minister has gone on record and said that my people, my intel, my police, my internal security had nothing. We thought it was two gangs having a shootout at each other and to the contrary. But this, you see, this Khalistanis came to us and told us, blame India, and we blamed India.
If the Indian authorities have worked with Canadian authorities, what are you hiding? Like, I don't understand.
I don't get it. I'll give one minute. Abhijit is, Abhijit, please. This is going from crazy to ridiculous here. Abhijit.
Good evening, Arnab. Good evening, everybody. Look, Canada is turning into the Western version of Pakistan. India has been providing dossier after dossier to Canada, just like we have been doing with Pakistan. There are more than 26 extradition requests that are pending. Extradition requests for Canadian-based terrorists. And we have sent these requests to Canada. This is spanning more than a decade. And they have done nothing about this. They have taken no action about this. And they are resorting to lying about all these matters. For example, yesterday, Trudeau testified that drive-by shootings and home invasions and even murders across Canada are allegedly tied to highest levels within the Indian government. This is absurd. This is crazy. I mean, the Trudeau experiment has failed. The Khalistan experiment has failed. And this is going to cause real-world repercussions for Canada. India has already said that it may no longer be interested in buying the Canadian-produced Stryker armored vehicles and so much more. So Justin Trudeau is an embarrassment for his country. He is lying outright, and he is presenting no evidence whatsoever. And a claim that is made without evidence can be dismissed with contempt without evidence.
No, this has no legal basis. You see, this way, if every person were to come out and say against everyone, we have intel, then everybody has intel on everybody. It's not admissible in a court of law. And just like there are no valid rumors, there is nothing called credible allegations. There can be credible evidence. You can't have credible allegations. It's like saying there are valid rumors. Daniel, what's going on there? What has he done yesterday?
Well, I mean, Trudeau has, sort of verified the entire Indian narrative. Now, internally in Canada, you should know that even though there's like a 10.5-hour time difference, so even though India might be in the future, you're actually kind of in the past on Trudeau. We're like 2.5 Trudeau scandals ahead of you right now. Okay. So yes, he destroyed our relationship with India, but that was Tuesday. We're on Thursday now. And the big scandal is the fact that there's 11 traitors in the parliament. Always was. And Trudeau seems to be protecting them. And then he tried to use the Foreign Interference Commission hearing, which was sent against them, right? Remember, he used India mostly to try and create a rally to the flag moment, and the Conservatives came and supported it. But then he ruined his rally to the flag moment by using the Foreign Interference Commission, which was investigating him and his party's foreign interference by trying to blame the official opposition, which hasn't been in power in 10 years, and then ruined his rally to the flag moment by attacking the Conservatives. And this is now blown up in his face, where everyone just wants him to release the names. So that's our big scandal. And yes, we have Pannun on TV. Yeah, we have the fact that, we didn't have hard evidence. We had intel. But just so you know, in Canada, we're 2.5 Trudeaus away from you. Plus, Yara Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, has died. So our foreign policy is going to stand with Israel today. And then tomorrow, they're going to start attacking Israel because we do this to our allies now. So that will be the foreign policy focus in Canada going forward. We're going to lose this in a momentum of Trudeau scandals and horrible foreign policy decisions. But to get back to it, the problem here between the two sides seems to be there are two issues at play here. One issue that's getting a lot of play in Canada, the issue that Canada is focusing on is, did they or did they not? Did the Indian government have a hand in this? Did they not? And that's a conversation. Now, there's another conversation that needs to be had, which is sort of the core of this issue, which is, should they or should they not, right? Is Hardeep Singh Nijjar a viable target for extrajudicial assassination? And that is a question that is much more complicated, because the real issue is violent Khalistani separatism being promoted on Canadian soil. You can make the argument that he was running terrorist training camps. He had Gurdwaras that were, openly praising suicide bombing, a member of the Khalistan Tiger Force, which logo has a lion in it because it's Khalistan and everything they do is stupid. And then you could say, okay, we tried to extradite him and now we knocked him off. The problem is when we merge these two things together, Canada starts to use this as evidence, right? Because all Canada is talking about is, did they or did they not, right? The entire mainstream media only pushes out Trudeau's narrative. So there's a reason why Pannun can come on TV, because they're never going to say, here's Pannun, a man who constantly threatens to murder all the Hindus in Canada and wants to commit an October 7th-like terrorist attack in India. Here he is to say, no, here's a Sikh activist, lawyer, friend of puppies and kittens, whatever. And then we just focus on did they or did they not. And when India starts to say, okay, well, there's actually underlying terrorism aspects to this here, where maybe we should have, the Canadian government is now using that as evidence of, look, they did, right? You see that in Trudeau's response when he says, when they said immediately, show us what evidence you have, right? To Canadians, it could seem like that's an omission of guilt, but if you understand both sides of the story, what the Indian government is actually worried about here is, what is the level of infiltration of Khalistanis into these security apparatuses? So, of course, we're not going to let your institutions, which we think are corrupted by Khalistanis, into our institutions to poke around.
No, we
right?
don't want to interfere in Canada's internal affairs. But the way that things are going, Daniel, we have genuine concern about Canada becoming a base for global terrorism. And I think Canadians should be concerned too, because once you go down that road, there's no looking back. And if today it's the Khalistani terrorists, and there is an ISI Islamist angle also, then there'll be a jihadist, Khalistani Islamist angle. And allow me to complete. I'll tell you what.
Show me the evidence.
Anis, I'll tell you. I'll please have a look at, please, Anis.
What is this ISI phobia?
Why are you jumping? You're not a member of the ISI?
Listen,
I am not, but I'm trying to understand,
like,
as a
security
Canadian,
apparatus
where is
said
this, in this equation, what is ISI doing? What is Pakistan doing?
We had that just come out in the hearing. We just had that evidence presented. Our security apparatuses just said Khalistan is a project by the ISI being pushed in Canada to undermine India. That was just said in this hearing.
No, and you see, this hurts Canada's image. Let me tell you, Daniel, I have never been to Canada, but I'm told it's a beautiful country with wonderful landscapes. It's a lovely place to travel in, and I do not think it helps Canada's image to be constantly spoken about in the global media, not just for its diplomatic row with India, but for becoming a base for any kind of terrorism. Now, here's an interesting angle, Professor Nalapad, that Daniel has raised. He says that there's a sort of a cover, a smokescreen of activism. Now, who's an activist? Daniel wrote an article, he said extremist, you and I would say terrorist. Now, Trudeau says in that hearing, he says, there is a group called Sikhs for Justice, and Sikhs for Justice is in touch with us. Now, my question is, if Hamas called itself the Islamic Justice Movement, would Trudeau believe Hamas? If ISIS called itself ISIS for Justice, would Trudeau believe ISIS? I mean, he's choosing to give a cover of activism. It can be a misplaced sense of wokeness, but I believe there's something else going on here. And I think also I need a comment from you on the way he's cornered himself at yesterday's briefing.
Well, I'd like to say, Arnab, that you're quite right. He has cornered himself on multiple fronts. And may I point out that the target is not so much India as it is, let's complete the sentence, India under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I mean, the person who is working very hard with Western countries to have a secure Indo-Pacific. Now, what Justin Trudeau is basically saying, India, trust us. You outsource our security to us. Now, he's saying it's criminal for Indian agencies to look into individuals and groups in Canada who are wandering around unmolested, who are collecting funds in an unmolested manner, who are transmitting those funds to locations in India, often via Hawala route. In other words, through illegal channels. And all this is there on plain record. Frankly, a high school student who has experience with the internet can locate this data. And the common thread running through all these people who are demonizing India, they are all opposed to a person called Narendra Modi. Now, Justin Trudeau, I mean, he's made remarks which are clearly personal. Now, for example, I have my differences about, Benjamin Netanyahu. But the fact of the matter is, his country was brutally attacked by a terror group, by two terror groups, as a matter of fact, and they have been supported by another country, which is in turn supported by a much bigger country. And frankly, the response that he gave was to ensure that this kind of a group will not raise its head again. And I think that is a normal response, if you ask me. So I'm not going to allow my personal feelings about Netanyahu and some of the mistakes he's made, such as releasing multiple hostages for one. But the point is, how can you call it criminal when a country is investigating terror activities in the soil of another country on itself? In the sense, India is investigating terror activities which are germinating in Canadian soil. Obviously, we would like to ensure that they don't end up like Kanishka, that hundreds of people don't die. And that is why India is doing it. The FBI is doing it. The MI5 is doing it.
The other aspect also,
democracy is doing
there's
it.
other aspect also which I wanted to bring into the debate is the choice of words and the way he was speaking yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, Daniel, and Anis, you saw it, but Abhijit, there was one point where he said that, see, I had this bombshell with me. I went to New Delhi. New Delhi is hosting this huge, G20 summit, a very, very big global event, and I could have wrecked it. He said, I could have wrecked it. He's speaking like some kind of a gangster language himself. This is not the way a prime minister speaks. And then he says, I met Prime Minister Modi and I told him about my concerns, and Prime Minister Modi complained about people who are on Canadian soil who are outspoken. Now, fact is, Daniel and Abhijit, we have no problem with outspoken people. In fact, you should see, Daniel and Anis, we did a sting operation on Republic a few years back, where we have the same people who are sharing stage with Trudeau every day. You can do a whole article on it. There is one person who's on stage with Trudeau. Trudeau celebrates him, shakes hands with him everywhere, who is on record in the sting operation, telling our reporter, this was shot at in London, that we have killed 2,700 Indian policemen, we have killed politicians, we have to kill more politicians, we have to kill more policemen, violence is the only way. And this person is bandied about as some kind of an activist in cozy photographs with Trudeau. Now, this sting operation was many years back. We have no problem. We have no problem with people being outspoken. And there is no verifiable truth to what he has said. My information is that Narendra Modi made it very clear to him that you are constantly advocating assassinations, killing, and questioning the sovereignty of India, which is a problem. It's not a freedom of expression argument, Abhijit, but he twisted it. He just twisted it, Abhijit. Again, without proof, which means he's such a big liar. Again, without any proof, just smiled and said all that yesterday before the Foreign Interference Committee. Ani, unmute yourself, Abhijit.
Yes, indeed. There seems to be some confusion between foreign interference and freedom of expression. They seem to use these terms extremely selectively. And like you said, Trudeau, when he last year came to India for the G20 summit, he had made these allegations and he had recused himself from the G20 dinner and stayed away from everybody. And there were allegations that he had come in a plane full of white powder and whatnot. But the mention of Pakistan that was made earlier, that's interesting because, you know, the ISI seems to be working with the Canadian government. You may recall that in 2020, there was a lady, a Balochistan activist called Karima Baloch, who was found dead in Toronto in 2020. She was murdered, obviously, and there's been no proper investigation into her death, and clearly the ISI has some involvement over there. And after this current fracas has ensued, the entire Five Eyes architecture is being activated in a very selected and phased manner, which makes us wonder as to what's going on. I mean, the Khalistan problem is not exclusive to Canada. The Khalistani terrorists are being sheltered in the US, in the UK, and even in Australia. And this entire ecosystem is being activated. So it looks like there is something bigger going on. There's a good cop, bad cop ploy going on. Canada is currently the bad cop. Trudeau is the crazy one, but there's a good cop somewhere over there. Maybe it's the US, and they are trying to apply some pressure on India to get certain things done. For example, there's this issue of penetration of Starlink into India, which could be a major national security threat. And maybe this is a pressure tactic to make India accept and allow Starlink to come into India and other things as well. So there's a whole lot that's going on. This is not an isolated one-off thing. It's a global kind of thing, and the whole Five Eyes architecture is being activated, and many people have remarked about this. So there's Canada, there's the ISI, there's the Khalistani terrorists, there is the entire Five Eyes architecture, there's the United States that playing good cop versus Canada's bad cop. So overall, it's about targeting India, it's about hampering the growth of India, it's about targeting Mr. Narendra Modi, Prime Minister Modi, trying to tarnish his image, and that's not worked. They wanted, through the Canadian allegations, to make him look weak and bad, but the exact opposite has happened. So good job, I would say. Your entire ploy has been turned on its head.
Now, what happens to Trudeau after this, Daniel? He just said it, that I made it all up, essentially, or even if he hasn't said in as many words that I made it all up, he says, I have no evidence. What happens now to him politically because of this?
Nothing. Now, there might be other things that oust him. So Justin Trudeau is so deeply underwater. You know, the amount of scandal to scandal to scandal that we've gone through in Canada. I mean, he should have not been allowed within 500 meters of the Parliament after the SNC-Lavalin scandal, in my opinion, but we continue to go down here. So right now his party is polling potentially in 4th place. Canada's a very liberal country, okay? The Liberal Party is the default party of Canada. It produces the most leaders, but Justin Trudeau is currently in a position right now. It's a first-past-the-post system, where the Conservatives are polling better than the Liberal and the NDP combined. This coalition he ended with Jagmeet was a death knell for both parties. For complicated political Canadian reasons that would take another 5 minutes to explain, but you're just going to have to sort of ask you him on various things. There's a great irony, though, that you might enjoy. Currently, set to be the official opposition in Canada is the Bloc Québécois, a political party that's French separatists that only exists in the province of Quebec. They don't even run federal candidates in any other province, because who would vote for the Quebec province? They're projected to become the official opposition because Justin Trudeau is so deeply unpopular. Now, the only things that can really oust Justin Trudeau now, because he could always be saved in a coalition, in a confidence vote by either Jagmeet Singh, a Khalistani separatist, or the French separatists if he promises them enough concessions. There's an internal caucus revolt from Justin Trudeau, where we think that over 20 MPs are trying to sign a letter to get him to resign. If there is enough pressure put on, and then these MPs sort of become public, will the amount of Liberal MPs who want Justin Trudeau out reach the number of the threshold and then to sort of block a confidence vote? So if there's enough MPs, and if they become public, there could be a situation where there's enough of a break in his own party to make him lose a confidence vote. That would trigger the end of his sort of reign as prime minister. Now, if you say, like, what's the potential benefit here? The way I see it is Justin Trudeau's plan to me has always been to be a global jet setter after, a global citizen, to prance around at the UN and be just a less serious version of Greta Thunberg, running around telling you that diversity leads to climate change because of racism, and you need to pay more taxes and whatever, buy this book that someone else wrote for me. By appealing to the most hardline ideologues, either radical leftists, Islamists, Khalistanis, whatever it is, I think he sort of increases his sort of book buyer base. Someone might buy 2 million copies of Justin Trudeau's book to support the cause when he gets out of office because of all these sort of things he's done. These are likely the political calculations going on in Justin Trudeau's head right now. So there's really nothing he can do to win an election. His party's going to get smoked anyway. You could say maybe he's trying to secure the Khalistani vote so the Liberals can maintain official party status and still get a lot of tax dollars. That might be one thing you could say, but electorally, the country he is so incredibly despised by at least half of the country, and I mean like actively despised.
I think there's also a bigger concern here, Daniel. We must have, and Anis, you see these Islamist groups, if they start making Canada their base, because of, Daniel said Canada is very, very liberal. You have a large territory, you have very low density of population, very, very liberal. These are the ideal conditions in which people can make you their base, because there'd be a lot of people there, hearing Daniel, I think, who'd be pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, pro-Houthi. Right? Today, you're with the Khalistanis, and tomorrow the pro-Hamas group will say that if you're with the Khalistanis, you have no right not to be with us. And what I've seen of the Canadian sensibility, Professor Nalapat, is they quickly go on the defensive. And they want to sort of be this big tent for everyone around the world. I mean, when Europe is shutting its doors, when Britain has, gone ahead with Brexit and protected its interests, Canada is the only place. When even Scandinavian countries are regretting their ultra-liberal line, Canada appears to be the best place to hang around. And that is what's going to happen. Professor Nalapat.
Look, the fact of the matter is Canada has become a safe haven for terror gangs, and may I say, the Hawala networks are neck deep with the narcotics lobby, and they're neck deep with various mafias, and the mafias are neck deep with the terror gangs. This is happening, and I've been going through some of the commentary that's coming, including from the U.S. military, which is saying that Canada is becoming a national security threat to the United States.
Canada is becoming to the world if it goes on in this way.
The United States is what they're interested in. My point, I'm heartened that the Conservative Party leader challenged Trudeau very openly on this kind of attack that he has made. Yes. I've been saying from the very beginning, what this man is doing is trying to take a pickaxe to the relations between India and the Western world. And essentially the point of the matter is, he is just, trying to turn the spotlight away from what Canada is in danger of becoming.
No,
let me tell you one
won't
thing,
be able to. This is not going to work.
One more comment.
Yes.
Look, let's not, the point is, you have got people who are Muslims, who are fanatic, but the overwhelming majority are moderate, and they're very, they're and progressive. You have got a few, fanatics in every faith, but the overwhelming majority are not.
I mean,
Trudeau appears to believe that in South Asia, only the fanatics count.
No,
and the 95% of the population that is non-fanatic does not count.
Yeah.
So Trudeau goes for the fanatic fringe, and that is a grave danger to Canadian security. This man is a risk to Canada and a risk to the whole democratic world.
What if, I would say, what if, not that we'll do it, what if we were, with all our clout, to start actively supporting, encouraging, and financing the Quebec independence movement, just as a return favor? It's a thought. It's a thought. Now, lastly, I want to say here that in this report, viewers, you'll be... Yes, Daniel? Now, just as a thought. I'm not saying we do it, but...
The Quebec, good luck with that. You might turn them into Canadian nationalists. They are the most petty and spiteful and...
No, I'm just... I meant that in jest. But I want to say, Daniel, that yesterday in this report, there are 4 references to the Republic Media Network, and we had a good laugh in our newsroom today, that according to the Foreign Interference manipulation, potential foreign information manipulation and interference, government release by the Canadian government. One of the biggest threats to Canada's sovereignty is yours truly and the Republic Media Network. And they have made 4 references to the Republic Media Network and said this is a very big network, very dangerous. They make us look like some, KGB type operation. And they are a very big network. And they say at one point that even if you put together all the Canadian networks, they mention a few, I don't know, Global News, CBC News, CTV News, this news, that news. They are not even 1/10 the size, all of them put together, in terms of the Republic Media Network. Now, are we a foreign threat? Did the Republic Media Network give sanctuary to Nijjar? Did we organize his killing? I mean, this is, I don't know who's buying this, Abhijit. But they put this before their government's highest authorities. They mention us 4 times, Abhijit.
Yeah, it's propaganda. That's what the Canadians do. That's what the Western world excels at, propaganda. They have always historically accused other nations of being past masters at propaganda.
We'll do it.
Or as we call it.
But yeah, this is propaganda, and they seek to set the narrative. For example, we expelled Canadian diplomats and we withdrew our diplomats, but they portrayed it the other way around. Like Canada expelled Indian diplomats and withdrew its diplomats. So it's a.
They don't know how we operate. Republic is the world's largest privately owned, journalist-owned news organization. And for them to make this implication, I should be suing the Canadian government for putting this out. We put hard work into building this network. This is absolute rubbish. I deny it. We condemn what the Canadians have said about us. I thank everyone tonight. And indeed, let's see what Trudeau does next. As he said, there are 2.5 Trudeaus ahead of us. Ladies and gentlemen, the streets of Bharuch in Uttar Pradesh are echoing with the sound of justice. After a